Doom, welcome to the Storm. We're socially awkward outcasts, crazy but an all-around nerds, convene, talk, and debate all things coach. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authenticator, Delton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, everyone.
And I'm your host, the silent one, the brains from pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight? Hello, Giant Turtle. Good to see you. Looks that's our time. In the name of Monty Python, I command thee, get on with it.
Where are the knights who say "me" when you need them? Or should I say when you need them?
Wait. Have I ever seen that movie?
You should have seen Holy Grail, because your childhood was alternating between traumatic and sheltered. I don't know if you ever did see Holy Grail.
Well, I have seen clips of it. I think I watched it in full like about a few years back.
I will admit
Sorry,
that I
just
do
like-
not yet have a physical copy of it, and I need to rectify that relatively quickly. Because I am ashamed.
Okay, give me 1 sec. So, kind of have a pact. Ironically enough, I pretty much gave everything for this week, actually.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very rare occasion.
Although to be fair, quite a lot of stuff this week is stuff we couldn't get to last week, which is stuff that I mostly sent.
Sure, but
and we do actually have a new white whale, it seems. Yeah. Which does make me happy, because I do think that the Rewriting Ripley article is some of our best work.
I still hated covering it, though.
Yep. That's what often happens. Some of the best rants come from the worst tripe. Like that one Game of Thrones article, the lady who thought she was better than everyone because she didn't like Game of Thrones. That may be our single best, or at least my favorite, individual segment of the show we've ever done. The only thing that might top it is the Young Turks Joker video back in the day. I really like doing that.
Okay. Okay, hold on. Fucking. Alright, there we go.
And for those that don't know what I'm talking about, there is an entire article, or there's an entire playlist for our coverage of the Rewriting Ripley article. The batshit dissertation that was our white whale until recently. And now we must avast because we have a new white whale at some juncture. But anyway,
I think we finished that like a year ago.
Yeah, before that, Mortal Kombat.
Thank you for no build-up at all. Thank you. Okay, yeah. So I saw Mortal Kombat last Sunday. Don't when did you see it, Dalton?
I pirated it during its opening weekend.
So like Friday or something.
I think it was Sunday. I could be wrong.
Okay, well either way, um, I guess just general thoughts first. It's not bad. It's pretty good actually. Far better than the
Significant,
first.
significant step in the right direction. It does what it
Um,
does in many ways what a good sequel should do, which is take what worked in the first one, double and triple and quadruple down on it, while simultaneously fixing anything that didn't work about the first one and scaling it up.
right. I'm not sure I understand the question there, Drangel. I don't think it was bad. I do think it has its flaws, which we will get into. But the second part is this new or old, like Dragon Ball Evolution. Is that I don't understand that.
There was a Mortal Kombat movie in the 90s.
Okay,
No,
that
this
idea.
this is
Okay.
this is the new one, the one that just came out.
Um, hopefully, I think Carl Urban as Johnny Cage. That's just an instant win.
I mean, I would have liked to have maybe seen a Johnny Cage who was younger and in his prime still, but given the given kind of the concept they were going for, which was the older Johnny Cage who was kind of recapturing the magic of his younger days. Um, I think Carl Urban works.
Um, music was actually a lot more impactful here, actually, than the first movie.
Mm.
I'd say, like on a technical standpoint, right?
Yeah, like I said, it improved on everything that the previous movie didn't get right, and doubled down on the stuff that the previous movie did get right. There are still problems with it, but
Yeah. Hey, give me 1 sec, and we can talk about that. Just entertain people for a moment.
okay. I assume Brainstormer must now deal with things off screen. So I will look in the chat and see what the most recent thing DT said was. I mean, orcas are both white and black, so they are so by the premise of your joke there, DT, they are mixed race. Well, um, but yeah, there are still problems with the thing, but I don't think it's I I I hesitate to call it bad in any way because, like I said, it did what a good sequel should do, which is double down on what worked, minimize to irrelevance what didn't work, and scale up what did work. That's those are the three jobs of any good sequel: double down on what worked, minimize what didn't, make make what worked larger, and scale them up.
Sorry, I wanted to get a drink. That was. I'm back.
You're good.
Um, how do I? Okay, I'll be honest though. I will be fully honest. I think a major thing that kind of would have helped both the first and second movie is if they two put together more so, because I feel like it they work better as congruently put. They work together if they
Yeah,
all.
they could have easily taken like the introductory bits of the first movie and like appended them to this movie and made it just one singular Mortal Kombat movie, and it would have been good.
Mm-hmm.
That that being said, the fact that most of the backstory was accomplished in the previous movie means that we can skip right to the part where the Mortal Kombating actually starts.
But it's weird. Like, I will say this. I know people. It's a weird. The Mortal Kombat movies from the '90s are a bit like on a weird, like, kind of teeter totter of quality.
They're 90s movies, yeah.
Yeah, but the first one handled both the introduction and the tournament in the first movie pretty well, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something they could have done here.
Well, the first movie had the problem of it was trying to experiment with the formula to try and get more character backstory.
That's fair.
But, like I said, they realized that that didn't work, and that's why they tried their damnedest to make this movie mostly the actual Mortal Kombating of Mortal Kombat.
I will say this though. Cole, people don't really like the character, but I think he's interesting in a certain way if he was handled better, right? The actor did well. Had an interesting power, I think. Kind of sucks they killed him off, though. I kind of understand for multiple reasons.
I'm glad they killed him off, because that effectively amounted to lampshading one of their mistakes, which is, why in the fuck are you focusing this movie on a character you made for the movie instead of any of the various cast of reoccurring characters the Mortal Kombat's had for 20 fucking years?
No, I agree. Although I think that could have been handled if they also touched upon that he was a descendant of Scorpion.
I also think that, again, if they had decided to go with a younger Johnny Cage in his prime, he could have been the main character from the get-go.
No, that's fair. Again, I see your only points, Don. I'm just trying to find like the best middle ground here for everything involved. Because, and I don't think I ever like probably explained this one, because we reviewed the first Mortal Kombat movie, right?
We did.
God, it's been so long ago.
I don't remember what episode we did it in, but I do remember doing it.
Okay, it's just like we've done so many of these, man. Everything starts to blur together at some point for me.
Yes, we are well over 300 at this point. It's been a while.
365.
So you could watch one episode a day, and it would take you a year to get caught up.
Yep. But I had this genuine idea I think would have been interesting. Because, well, they don't bring it up here. The dragon symbols to mark champions or chosen of the realms, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an interesting concept that I wish I would have gone more into. And the fact that, well, okay, it kind of starts with a kind of a rewrite of the idea for Scorpion as a whole. Like, still everything that happened in the first movie, right? Like his backstory. But he was a champion. Like, he actually attended into in a tournament before the movie prior, right? Either he fought alongside, like, I believe it is the Great Kung Lao. I think time-wise that makes the most sense, that he would have been around at the same time as that tournament. And so either that or he was the champion of the last Mortal Kombat tournament. Either way. he's still sought out and killed because he's seen as a threat to both Outworld for the next tournament and stuff like that. So I believe in the original idea is that champion Mortal Kombat tournament becomes immortal. I could be wrong on that. So correct me if I am. Is
That particular aspect of the lore, I don't know off the top of my head.
It was either that or something like about him training up the next generation to handle the next tournament. Whatever reason, obviously. He's still found and killed, and that child, like his other child, besides his son, is taken in by Raiden, and generations pass. And the idea was like my idea was. Did you say something, or am I hallucinating again?
No, I didn't say anything. What you heard, phone's notifications being.
Oh.
If you heard something.
I thought I heard you say wait. Sorry. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, family bloodline of Hanzo Hasashi. They have the Dragon Mark, which is considered a birthmark. By normal people of Earthrealm, right? But it shows both the potency and strength of that bloodline, and basically everyone that has gone through that bloodline or family, the generations, they're known to be fighters. They're known to be like combatants, or some have, even though most of them never really handled like anything that was being asked of Cole by the time his time came in. But just to show like the reason why people would want to kill that family is because it is dangerous, and now that I say it makes sense that Hanzo Hasashi was the champion of Earthrealm of his time for that Mortal Kombat tournament. But yeah, I'm just like, I don't know. I just think it's interesting, and it adds an interesting lore bit that like some people just be randomly chosen. Then you have like entire like family bloodlines that just can't exist.
It's a little bit like the first 3 districts in Hunger Games being like obsessed with training for the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
As opposed to everyone else who tries their damnedest to just not be chosen, period.
Yeah. I mean, it can also be like, yeah, that's like, since it's Hanzo Hasashi, Scorpion's like bloodline. Like they're the only bloodline that carries on the mark every generation. Like all the others randomly selected by
God. I guess now is as good a time as I need to get into the elephant in the room. A lot of people were upset that Katana got so much screen time, and I don't really see it.
Yeah, I don't get that. Her story makes a lot of sense for this movie,
and it didn't like belittle Johnny Cage or any of the other male characters, and it's not like she was a Captain Marvel style like stoic ballbuster bitch or anything. So yeah, I don't.
That's so weird. That's so weird.
People, I swear to God, just get too punch drunk on. Like, believe me, I get being invested in the culture war. If you've watched any episodes of this show, you know how deeply invested I am in calling out the philosophical fuckery that is social justice and more broadly neo-Hegelianism, especially in its post-Frankfurt School formulation. But all I can think is the line from Robin Williams' Genie from Aladdin: "One too many hits with the snake."
Yeah.
And I really don't like the prospect that this movie will underperform on that basis, and then we won't get a third one. Because if they learn as much from this movie as they seem to have learned from the previous movie, the third movie could be genuinely pretty freaking amazing. Because this movie is already a massive improvement on the first one, and if they improve to a similar degree of fidelity on this one with the third one, that could genuinely be some good shit.
Um, I guess to kind of get into more of the less than ideal things for this movie, which
Mhm.
are few, but are still prevalent enough to be worth mentioning.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go first.
Mm.
Biggest one, pacing.
Yeah,
It's very fast.
they they wanted to fix what they broke last time by hyperfixating on the games. The problem being is Mortal Kombat is a franchise from the fucking 90s, and so has always been rather light on the like cutscene lore,
Um,
and
well, okay, I will
and
say, yeah,
it,
cutscene
it
lore.
doesn't leave it doesn't leave much room for the plot such as it is. It's
I
just
mean, it still had like pretty in-depth lore relatively, but I do understand
yeah,
what you're
yeah.
saying.
No, I'm not saying it failed to translate the lore that is there. I'm just saying if you're pacing a movie the way you would pace a video game, it's going to not leave much room for you to actually do much in the way of plot
Yeah.
writing.
I also doesn't have time for there are like smaller moments, like moments of like kind of both character building and just character dynamics formed and stuff.
A lot of characters don't get nearly as much time or indeed speaking lines as they should.
Yeah. Raiden was a bit.
Which on the one hand is fine because, we have to not make a movie that's lasting 3 fucking hours. Um
I
but
mean, it's only.
unironically, this movie was closer to like the 90-minute mark, and I genuinely feel like if it had that extra half an hour, um if it was just 2 hours even, it could have left a lot more time for developing the side characters instead of just the main players.
I mean, yeah, it's just like
The
yeah,
other
it's.
characters are all there, mind you. It's just it's very much the main characters will get screen time first, and we'll get around to the other ones in presumably the sequels.
I will say though that they were still fine. Like they were serviceable. They were like the actors gave them a lot of character.
Yeah,
The
and they're not bad translations of the characters from the games, which again, I support this movie doubling down on the games and getting better at portraying the games. That is
right.
how we
Um,
that is how the video game genre matures in the same way that the comic book movie genre started maturing around 2008, 2009.
right. I do also Shao Kahn. While he wasn't like as prevalent as he could have been, he was good.
I feel like he should have been the main villain, honestly.
I feel like he was. It's just we didn't get enough time to really feel.
Well, but that's the thing. One thing I wish we had gotten more of, and we did get it in the '90s movie. To be fair, which might be me being slightly biased. I wish we had gotten more of like the interplay between the contestants instead of all the contestants basically being fundamentally on the same team when the plot needed them to be. Not saying you couldn't also do that. It's just I kind of like or I kind of liked the almost. This is gonna sound like a weird poll. Do you remember the game show parody at movie of Jimmy Neutron?
Hold on. Let me search my memory real quick. Big bulbous like alien dude with the right.
Voiced by Tim Allen. Yes, Meldar.
Okay, yeah, yeah. It's come back to me.
What I liked there was it wasn't just the contestants versus Meldar, the host. You got to see the like interspecies competitiveness, and even though most of the characters were, joke characters, like you had an entire species that were just brains, you had um species that were like made of needles and shit. Um it still made you feel the kind of Earth Realm hoorah that I really think this could have gone for if we got to see more interplay between the various factions.
Yeah, that's
Not
fair. Don, you're a Mortal Kombat fan? That's what Giant Charles asking.
it's not the highest on my list of franchises, but I am a retro gamer, and so I always will have a soft spot for
I got
certain retro
really,
game franchises.
I'll be honest, I got really into Killer Instinct.
Mm,
Mainly the reboot game, which I really wish got like a sequel or something, or a
mm.
continuation of that. It's an interesting.
I
I'm looking.
wouldn't wish that in today's day and age because the monkey's paw might curl. Given the absolute state of AAA games in general and the media that surrounds them in particular, you may regret making that wish someday soon.
Well, I wasn't serious about it. I'm just saying, like, when I played it back then, and that's a game that came out in like the early 2010s. So,
Mm.
but okay, I will get okay because I want to say this when I not that okay. Now I feel like I gotta talk about this because it's very important because it is a big part of this franchise.
Mm-hmm.
The fight choreography. It's
Really fucking good here.
it is. It's but it doesn't feel as impactful as I think it. What I mean
Well,
by that, can I?
go ahead.
Yeah, and what I mean by that, to explain myself, everything feels far too floaty and a little less. How do I put this? It just never feels like there's okay, yeah.
Your time.
It feels very cartoony, and not in the fun kind of cheesy kind of way that I like personally. More so that it you can tell it's just actual like like how you see those videos of like previs fights and stuff.
Mm.
Basically like that. That's what it feels like.
I mean, I agree up to a point because I do think they could have gone even further over the top, given that that's the way they decided to go. And by the way, that is the correct decision
No, no, I'm not.
because
I do agree
like
with that.
Mortal Kombat is all about the like mystic kung fu over the top like wire fu sort of stuff.
No,
Um,
I agree with that. I'm the thing I'm getting at though is like I feel like there wasn't a sense to ground it. And what I mean by grounding, obviously, is like it doesn't really ever feel like you can kind of tell who is going to win a fight or what is actually going to happen. It doesn't really feel like characters are in danger. Like you don't give the audience like that slight moment of questioning the outcome of a fight.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons. Like, while I admire their choice to just translate the games in this one, um, which again was probably all things considered the correct choice if you're gonna try and fix the first one by way of the second one. Um, like there's not much. It's so focused on translating what people liked about the games. There isn't much time left over to let it be a movie in and of its like the sorts of like character depth and plot progression and shit that you would get in a normal movie like this, you don't get because the movie is too busy basically speed running the games, which
Yeah.
again is probably the correct answer. And as a sometimes Mortal Kombat fan, I did enjoy that aspect, but I feel like there could have been ways to get that, um, game vibe while still making allowances for things like character and plot writing.
Yeah. Still fun though. I'm not gonna deny that it
Yeah,
wasn't
no,
fun.
again,
Like,
it is a massive improvement on the first one, and I worry that the Katana controversy is going to nerf this movie so hard that they don't make another one, or that they learn the completely wrong lessons from it underperforming, and instead of continuing along what I consider to be the correct answer, which is double down on the games, you fucking cunts. Um, like provide for the fans that fan service which they want. But I worry because this movie is underperforming, they might learn the opposite lesson and therefore will go back to basically apologizing for the games rather than embracing what the games are. And that would be a damn shame because if the third movie can improve on the second movie in the same way that the second movie improved on the first one, we could genuinely be into some interesting territory come the third one. If if they don't learn the wrong lesson from it underperforming and decide to pull back on all the over the top shit that people actually like or should actually like, minus the people who for whatever reason think there's too much Katana here or too much focus on Katana as a character, which again, I understand the culture war is a fraught battlefield at every turn, but I think y'all might be having a few too many hits with the snake if you genuinely think there's a problem with the way they handled Katana here.
all right. Well, for a little bit at least, unless we finish it, I'm not sure if we will. We're going to continue the Gamer.no article, Epstein Culture War and the Eternal Gamergate, written by Andreas Bjornbeck, published April
And if
9th.
you would like to see our coverage of the first couple paragraphs of it, please make your way to the previous episode of the show.
Yeah, because we are going to be starting like on a new part. And I believe I should preface this again. I believe I said it last week as well. Just due to because my computer is very old, it cannot translate the article on my screen, so I have to use my phone, and thus, therefore, you will only be looking at our icons for the moment.
Mm.
I do apologize for that. So
I feel like we should get a placeholder video or a placeholder visual of some kind for moments like this.
I didn't prepare one. I forgot. So
Mm.
yeah, I will
But
make sure to remember that.
this article is shaping up to be our new white whale after we finished the rewriting Ripley article about a year ago. So
Yeah.
I am pleased. I enjoy when we have a main antagonist. a little bit.
So shall we?
Yep.
All right. The big picture. It doesn't necessarily matter how influential the Gamergate foot soldiers were in the election in sheer numbers. That is, how many newly liberated Gamergaters went out to vote. What matters is how the rhetoric, worldview, and reactionary culture spread to the rest of the population outside the gaming community. That's what made an impact on the public vocabulary, the psyche, and the information diet of the general population.
Okay, but you're basically arguing against the entire premise of the article then. If Gamergate is not influential enough to have any of the impacts you just projected onto it, then you can't then proceed to use it as a source for fear mongering. And if it is influential enough to have an impact on the world, you got to stop belittling and catastrophizing about it and actually address the arguments and circumstances behind Gamergate instead of treating it like some sort of paranoid splinter cell. Like you can have one of these or you can have the other. There really is very little in between for you to be fucking fence sitting upon. Either Gamergate is important enough to have an impact, in which case it should be addressed seriously rather than ad hominem to death, or it made or its impact is indirect and doesn't really matter to the overall political discourse, in which case stop fear mongering. You may have one of these or you may have the other. You may have this rock or this hard place. You can't try to have both at the same time, and yet this entire article is Gamergate is really scary and fascist and derp and derp, but it's also a bunch of pathetic losers who never did or accomplished anything. You can't you can't do that. It must either be one or it must be the other, and you can't try to. What you're trying to do is say that they are impactful enough to be scary, but not so much that we can't mock its adherents for being pathetic. And I'm sorry, but that's, for the most part, that's an illegal move. You cannot do that. Either they are to be feared, in which case you have to take them seriously, or they are to be mocked, in which case this entire article is nothing but a paranoid fever dream. And incidentally, most of this article is a paranoid fever dream.
Moving on.
Yep.
Is this type of influence? Oh, sorry. It is this type of influence that has led the editor of the Norwegian Culture War newspaper Subject, with a K instead of a C, Dan B. Choi, to use Norwegianized words like virtue posing as often as he can. Virtue signaling was coined by Brexit-friendly James Bartholomew in 2015 and describes people who say morally acceptable things but don't actually do anything about the problems they talk about.
Okay, no. Stop your recontextualizing. It's not morally acceptable to anyone outside of the framework. The issue generally, okay, there's a couple levels to virtue signaling. Okay, actually, let me go back a second, because I'm pretty sure the term virtue signaling existed before that. I'm pretty sure it had nothing to do with the Brexit MPs. I'm pretty sure the term virtue signaling comes from places like Twitter and 4chan. I don't have the receipts on that to hand, but I'm willing to bet that the concept of virtue signaling existed before that. That's just when it went mainstream. But more to the point, there are several levels of virtue signaling. One of them, yes, is beating the war drum for a given virtue while not actually doing anything substantive about it. That is part of virtue signaling. Another part of virtue signaling is treating universal standards like they are particular to yourselves and only yourselves. I.e., when you say, I am against harassment, that seems to imply implicitly that there are a group of people who are not against harassment, and that kind of virtue signaling is both facile because it treats banal universal virtues as rare, particular, and outstanding virtues. Basically, it's a way of turning your enemies into subhuman, demonized pricks who don't have any morals at all, and turning yourselves into the only moral people in the room. But it also, I forget how I was going to put that. Give me a second. It it also that's the way I was going to go with it. It also does the straw man thing where your morality is the source of all forms of morality, and therefore you get to co-opt and um essentially use universal virtues as a human shield. It's okay. It's the tyranny of the moral euphemism, essentially. It's what the Tradcon evangelicals did with the term family values, or what the neo-Hegelian types used to do with the term social justice. By insinuating that their framework is the only framework in which these human universals can be meaningfully accomplished. Essentially, using the Tradcons as an example, because I suspect the person who wrote this article doesn't like Tradcons, and thus will be able to be easier reasoned with if I use them as an example. The problem with the concept of capital F, capital V family values as a thing, as a moral euphemism, is it implies, or at least sneaks past the reader, that the only way to be for families in the general sense is to adhere to this very particular moral framework. And social justice does the same thing. By co-opting social justice, they are insinuating that the only way to want justice for society is to smuggle in all of these ideological particulars. It's using the human shield of the universal and narrowing that universality to the particular, so that our way of being good is the only way to be good, and what's more, it's the only way anyone has ever thought to be good. It's like when Neil Gaiman said that 90s Vertigo was always woke, even though that was long before the framework broadly termed as wokeness or social justice existed, and the counterculture of the 80s stroke 90s is very different from the mainstream culture of the 2010s and 2020s. Moving on. Brainstormer.
Yeah, sorry, I was just my phone turned off real quick, so I was just trying to get back to the.
I had to plug in your security pin.
No, I was like it just turned off, so I had to get back in my phone. Like like after a time, it turns itself off. Yeah.
My phone straight locks me out when it does that, and I have to end up putting
Yeah.
in the security code.
Yeah, same thing. Okay. In other words, charge is that even those who say they care about injustice don't really care, but are more concerned with appearing good, regardless of what reality might suggest and what one is willing to do.
No.
Okay, hold on.
Fuck your disingenuous framing. you're assuming that your definitions of those words are universally agreed upon, and they aren't. You are taking things that have existed since time immemorial, like human universal concepts like justice, fairness, etc., and insinuating that your ideology is the only valid source of them, and in so doing, co-opting all the moral work of the rest of humanity and tying them disingenuously to your ideological particulars. Your ideology, honey, is not the source of all good things, and therefore those opposing your ideology are not subhuman demons. You cannot play this moral euphemism game with me where you capitalize something that is a human universal so as to implicitly weasel your ideological particulars into it, and then when somebody pushes back on your particular ideology, you use the lowercase universal version of the value you're co-opting to say you can't fight my ideology without implicitly saying you disagree with this human universal thing I've appended to it. You can't. It's the Tradcons going, you can't be in favor of family values and also support the gays, or the social justice monger going, you can't be in favor of societies having justice unless you believe in neo-Hegelian false dichotomies of identity and oppression. Yet no, we can. We can keep the philosophical universals while shunning your ideological particulars, because despite the fact that you call your ideology family values or your ideology social justice, that does not mean that your ideology is the one true source of all of the endeavors that humans have accomplished that have to do with those things. The Tradcon evangelicals do not get to shun the gays because they call themselves family values, and social justice doesn't get to co-opt everything since the Code of fucking Hammurabi because they call themselves social justice. You are taking a universal term and trying to insinuate that only your particular ideology could possibly ever result in it. It is not true. Moving on.
Moving on, or
Yeah.
okay, sorry, it's wasn't sure you went quiet like so. All right. In reality, there is zero daylight between Bartholomew's virtue posturing, Progress Party leader Sylvie Lislog's tyranny of goodness, or disgraced psychologist Jordan Peterson's authoritarian tolerance. And he brings up a Twitter post from 2022 where, okay, so there's apparently there was a Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover for a Yumi New, like the model, right on the cover.
Mm.
It was a bit plus size, I guess. Not overtly or anything, just rounder, I guess. And Dr. Peterson's tweet is, sorry, not beautiful, and no amount of authoritarian tolerance is going to change that. I think it's a bit of a stretch for the guy, because I'm looking at her right now. She doesn't look bad or anything. Like, it's not overt or anything. She's just a bit, she's got curves.
What he's reacting to is the forced body positivity and the forced anti-aesthetics thing. But
I mean,
but incidentally, on the topic of Jordan Peterson and his disgrace, quote unquote, disgracing only works if you actually have the average person on your side. Disgracing only works if we can agree that you have moral legitimacy. For example, the scientists who operate on the round Earth model are disgraced according to the flat earther community, but to actually validate that disgrace is to validate the moral legitimacy of or the intellectual legitimacy of the flat earther community, and they have none. Likewise, I don't really care if the psychological establishment, the psychological institutions, the normative institutionalists have agreed that Jordan Peterson is disgraced, because I don't think the current crop of intersectional feminist infused bullshit that is the psychological profession has any legitimacy in the first place. So yes, I'm sure the psychological establishment has a negative opinion of Jordan Peterson and have tried to take away all of his titles and awards and accomplishments and shit, but you can't disgrace him because I don't actually value your opinion. In order for him to actually be disgraced, you would actually have to have some kind of moral high ground over him, and you have none. Now, mind you, Jordan Peterson, especially after his wife died, kind of went a little bit insane, and I don't think surrounding himself with the folks at the Daily Wire was a very good idea for him, because many of his best opinions originally were very left-wing by American standards, even if they were right-wing compared to social justice. But being that as it may, and Jordan Peterson's recent lack of erudition when it comes to making nuanced points aside, he is more valid than the average normative institutional psychologist, because the average person within the psychological profession is an ideologically captured moron, and the quote unquote institutions of the psychological profession have no moral high ground with which to disgrace somebody. And so in other words, to borrow a meme from Rick and Morty, the psychological profession's boos mean nothing because I have seen what makes it cheer, and what's more, to add my own spin to this, not only have I seen what makes the psychological profession cheer so often that I no longer care about its booing, I've also seen what other things the psychological profession has booed, and that in and of itself is a discrediting factor for the psychological profession, in my opinion. Moving on.
Okay. Okay. Virtue signaling became one of the biggest and earliest accusations from the far right, including Gamergaters, against anything they didn't right, along with the trio of SJW, Social Justice Warrior, Woke, DI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Okay, here's the thing though. All of those terms, with the exception of virtue signaling, were what the social justice types essentially co-signed and strived to call themselves. DEI and ESG are explicitly corporate initiatives that the social justice mongers created for themselves. Same thing with the term social justice. That is a term they came up with themselves. I forget what the last one was. What was the fucking last one they mentioned?
DEI?
No, before what was the one before that?
Woke.
Oh, woke. Woke was a term coined by the Black Lives Matter movement, if I remember correctly. It ironically has a lot of, or in its original context, had a lot of crossover with what the anti-social justice movement would refer to as being red-pilled. The idea that once you start seeing the system that underpins society, you can't unsee it. But yeah, that's a term that the broadly social justice minded came up with on their own, and the right, quote unquote, which in the original context of Gamergate, I will remind everyone, was actually the center left, the classical liberals and classical libertarians of the left. Like Sargon was originally the internet's poster child for classical liberalism. Same thing with people like Tim Pool and Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was we covered this in an article where they were trying to frame Hassan Piker as the Joe Rogan of the left, but as many people have said before, and I assume many people will say again, Joe Rogan was originally the Joe Rogan of the left because originally Joe Rogan was lefty. He was an ex MMA fighter and a stoner in fucking California and shit. It's just that the social justice left likes to exclude every form of leftism except its own from the category of being left wing, and so even classical liberalism and classical libertarianism now are considered right wing, let alone the people like Sargon who got so punch drunk on the culture war that he eventually just disavowed his own classical liberalism, much to his downfall ever since. But yeah, originally in the context of Gamergate, Gamergate was a classically liberal and classically libertarian center left usually movement. It had nothing to do with the right wing. The only reason it gets classed as right wing is because the social justice left has taken over the Overton window so entirely that they've moved the Overton window significantly further to the left, such that classical liberalism and classical libertarianism have become right wing, and or the culture war hog fucked some people's minds so badly that they went, well, if you're gonna call me a traditionalist and a fascist and a Islamophobe and all these other things anyway, then I might as well just embrace them, which is what Sargon did, much again to his comparative failure. Moving on.
Okay. Add the accusations of cancellation culture, and you have a classic reaction buzzword cocktail. Dan B. Choi last used the word in an article on January 29th, where he accused Afton Post's journalist of engaging in completely risk-free virtual signaling in an interview with Alexander Rybak related to Israel's participation in Eurovision.
Those who simp for the establishment are performatively virtue signaling with no danger. While this is not the only vector for how you could identify a grassroots movement, one way you can definitely identify a grassroots movement is as a corollary to Voltaire's famous, if you want to know who rules over you, find out who you can't criticize. There's a flip side to that, which is if you want to know who probably actually are the rebels, figure out who those in the aforesaid power would really like you to criticize and encourage you to criticize. Typically, the actually offensive to the establishment party is the one with the more legitimate cause. Again, it's not the only factor that demonstrates grassroots legitimacy, But if you genuinely want to be on the right side of history, TM, look at what the institutions of society don't want you to do, don't want you to simp for, don't want you to agree with, don't want you to rally on the behalf of. Like for example, the civil rights movement now is very, very, very establishment to the point that every midwit millennial seems to be confused to how the civil rights movement was ever even necessary. But in the 60s and 70s, it wasn't actually the establishment. It wasn't actually the common universal belief of everyone. It was something that was seen as weird. So again, this isn't the only way to tell when something is grassroots versus when something is just astroturfed. But I think it's fair to say that if you actually wanted to be anti-establishment and grassroots in today's day and age, you would not be a normative institutionalist you wouldn't be a normatively institutionalist third wave feminist, because third wave feminism is what corporations want you to spend your activist energy on. The most risky thing you could be in today's day and age is a anti-feminist men's rights advocate, specifically because it is the one that all of the newspapers, all of the corporations, and all of the fucking academia are pathologically terrified of. Moving on.
Danby Choi's subject has worked hard to keep the debate around wokeness or signaling alive in recent years. In an article from 2023, where the undersigned is interviewed, the subject writes about how apparently many on YouTube reacted when Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 offered players completely optional to use pride flags in their profile banners. Subject quote, a gaming YouTuber named Sydney Watson, a far-right Australian American. Subject refers to as conservative. Watson was a guest on channels such as Sky News Australia and One American Network, far-right and Trump-loyal network, for a period, but probably had relatively little influence internationally outside her own following, with very little relevance to Norwegian readers. Nevertheless, subject chooses to spread her reactionary opinion and present the idea as something many share.
Okay, so here's the thing about that. It's a very interesting way you phrased that just now. Keeping the conversation alive can be a thing that is done for two reasons. Reason one, why someone might be trying desperately to keep a conversation alive. The one you're implying seems to be because it's not organic, or because it doesn't really connect to anything, or because it's not really relevant and would organically die on its own. That is one way to interpret that. Or another reason why you might try your damnedest to keep a conversation alive is if you are being deliberately marginalized, tertiaryized, and silenced, in which case you would obviously try hard to keep a conversation alive because you're being enforced from the top down and from without to not talk about it. You want your readers to come away with the conclusion that the reason why they have to actively labor to keep the conversation alive is because nobody actually cares, and it's an inorganic supposition. But here's the thing. Large swaths of what used to be called social justice and is now called wokeness is explicitly about how certain things being said in the name of free speech is actually authoritarian and fascist, and so we must cancel it, we must censor it, we must deplatform it so that fascism does not come on the rise. Regardless of whether these things are legitimately fascist or not, which by the way they aren't and never have been, But even insinuating that, trying to counter an authoritarian ideology by censoring it is a rather interesting self-report, and harkens back to Churchill's famous quote of the fascists of the future will call themselves anti-fascists, i.e., the authoritarians who like to censor things and control institutions from the top down will call themselves anti-fascist so that they can frame everyone else's opinions as authoritarian or censorious, even though one of these sides is asking for freedom of speech and the other explicitly has entire paradigms of their ideological framework focused on deplatforming. Now, mind you, there is a certain strain of fundamentalist, traditionalist conservatism on the right that also would very much like to censor and purify and institutionalize and fuck off. But the thing is, I would like to see both of you shown the door. I would like to see a world with neither neo-Hegelian post-Frankfurt School social justice nor TradCon family values. I can say no to both of you because any ideology that tries to institutionalize morality and stifle individualistic freedom of expression can go fuck itself, if you please. And when you have to start creating concepts like deplatforming and cancellation for the greater good, TM, that is often how you know you're on the wrong fucking side. Because the side that wants to speak and would gladly let other people speak as well tends to be the good guys, generally speaking. Moving on.
Okay. Tribal society. Steve Bannon's influence cannot be underestimated. After years as the radicalization puppeteer for the Eternal Gamergate, and after working as Donald Trump's chief strategist, 2018 boasted of his own power and personal text messages to Epstein. I'm now an advisor to Front National in France, Silvani League / Liga in Italy, AfD in Germany, Swiss People's Party, Viktor Orban in Hungary, Land and Freedom, Nigel Farage in UK. Roger that. Epstein writes back. Bannon's list consists not only of reactionary right-wing extremists, but of parties that range between both Eurosceptic and outright anti-EU.
Being Eurosceptic is not bad. Being anti-EU is not bad either. Because when people oppose the EU, they're not opposing the countries the EU is attached to. They're opposed to the internationalist bureaucratic institution that strangles European countries and uses them as human shields. Also, something I missed because I got so focused on the keeping the conversation alive point. You immediately after that once again say these things are not relevant to our reader base, but we're going to fearmonger about them anyway, basically. Which again, one wonders how many times you can say this obviously doesn't mean what we're saying it means, but we will continue to say it anyway. And by the way, Gamergate and Comicgate and the Fandom Menace and all the other assorted anti-social justice gates only are eternal, quote unquote, because the neo-Hegelian post-Frankfurt School bullshit that is social justice refuses to stop ideologically and institutionally capturing and then subverting the products of every IP in the known fucking universe because they see the only and sole purpose of art as it is to be a socio-political and moral weapon, you stupid cunts. If social justice or wokeness or DEI and ESG or the post-Frankfurt School neo-Hegelianism could stop injecting itself into every fucking institution and the IPs connected to those institutions, there would be no need for Gamergate, Comicsgate, or the Phantom Menace, because they would have already gotten what they wanted. The only reason these things are eternal is because y'all keep fucking up more and more and more and more and more and more of pop culture, of academia, of every corporation in the fucking Western world, and we would very much still like you to knock it the fuck off, please. If you could stop first co-opting, then infiltrating, and then subverting everything under the sun for your own moralistic ends, Gamergate, Comicsgate, and the Phantom Menace would fuck off because their purpose would have already been served. You can't continue to exacerbate and double down on the problem and then be surprised that the grassroots movements concerned about the problem don't go off and fuck off and die, go off into that good night. Because as long as the problem of neo-Hegelian bullshit remains, those of us who oppose neo-Hegelian bullshit, especially as it pertains to co-opting and infiltrating our favorite fucking things, will still have a fucking problem with it. If you want people like EFAP and the Critical Drinker and Gary from Neurotic and so on to not exist anymore or not draw audiences anymore, then concede to some of their points, address some of the issues they keep trying to address, and then they will have less of a reason to exist. But you can't see your ideology as having done anything wrong, and you also consequently can't see your opposition as ever having any legitimate complaints. And so the Eternal Gamergate, as you put it, must continue because the problems that led to Gamergate arising in the first place still have not been fully solved. Moving on. You can't create people sick and command them to go. Sorry, moving on.
You went on to boast that right-wing populist parties could go from 92 to 200 seats in the 2019 European Parliament elections, and that he could thus shoot down any bill related to regulating the cryptocurrency market. It is important to remember that several billionaires and powerful figures, including Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Steve Bannon, Jeffrey Epstein, Peter Thiel, and Nigel Farage, all have personal investments in cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin and personal meme coins that can be manipulated in a flash.
I imagine everyone with a stock portfolio is invested in at least some Bitcoin. Doesn't mean it's the majority of their fucking stock portfolio. And it doesn't even necessarily mean anything particularly sinister because Bitcoin, rather uniquely, is not tied to any centralized institution for the most part. But incidentally, populism is not just right wing. Populism is not on the left-right axis, it is on the libertarian versus authoritarian axis. Namely, populism is usually, unless something else has gone very, very wrong, on the libertarian side of the vertical axis of the political compass. And I am saying this as someone who supported Bernie Sanders both times he ran for president, and whose second and third choices in the most recent time he did that were Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard. I am a left-wing, generally speaking, populist. I just know that populism and libertarianism are bigger priorities for me. So if that means I have to cross the Rubicon and vote for a right-wing populist like Trump or Vance, given that the left gives me no candidates to vote for, looking at you, Kamala Harris, looking at you, Hillary Clinton, that I will do so. Because regardless of right or left wing, I want populism in democratic countries. I want populism in democratic republics because in the actual annals of history and etymology, populism and democracy should always be at least implicitly linked. And the problem you have is people who are more addicted to normative institutionalism and less okay with populism want populism gone because they are creatures of the norms and institutions, and they don't see any problems with the norms and institutions. So they see anyone who does describe themselves as a populist as the problem. And I don't believe that. Even people I don't like, okay, you must understand this. Even people I don't like, but that are still reflective of populism, deserve more of a voice than the normative institutionalist. That's why, much as I hate him and think that he is a shitty person, I would much rather see people like Hassan Piker in the White House media room instead of CNN, because whether we like it or not is irrelevant to the fact that Hassan Piker has his finger on the pulse of a larger and more grassroots segment of the left than CNN does. And given the choice between actual populism of even people I don't like Hassan Piker and Vosh, or normative institutionalism of CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, I will raise my hand high and side with Hassan Piker as it pertains to this particular issue, because whether I like him or agree with his ideologies or not is not germane to the fact that he is a populist voice. He is grassroots up until a point, and his opinions are more reflective of the people on the ground, the populace, than otherwise. In the same way, as even though I am a 2016 era Bernie bro in like all of my policy positions, I will still gladly support Trump over Hillary or Kamala because Trump is more reflective of the grassroots of the right wing, the populist vector of the right wing than Hillary or Kamala. And the Republicans at least let their populist guy run, unlike Bernie Sanders, who was screwed over both times, and unlike Tulsi and Yang, who didn't even get a fair shake. It doesn't surprise me, for example, that Tulsi Gabbard eventually fucked off and became a Republican because she was very obviously made aware of the fact that the institutions and the norms of the Democratic Party would not let a populist like her good self run, and so she simply made the calculation of, I can change to being a right-wing populist and my populism will actually actualize into fruition, or I can be irrelevant forevermore on the Democratic side because the Democratic side hates populism right now. Whether it be Trump or whether it be the like AOCs of the world, even people I disagree with who are actually reflective of the voices of the populace deserve more legitimacy than the institutions
Hey, Dom.
that have existed forever and basically mean nothing now, like CNN. Moving on.
By all accounts, Brexit is the jewel in Bannon's fascist crown, and he used every Gamergate figure he could to get there. As early as June 26, 3 days after the Brexit election, Epstein writes in an email to surveillance billionaire Peter Thiel, Brexit, just the beginning. When Thiel asked to what, the convicted financier explains, a return to tribal society, counterattack against globalism, finding things that are heading for collapse was much easier than finding the next coup.
Brexit was explicitly not fascist. You want to know how I know? It's because Giovanni Gentile and Benito Mussolini, the fucking originators of fascism, thank you very fucking much, defined fascism as all things within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. And so something like Brexit cannot be fascist because it explicitly is an anti-bureaucracy, anti-large, overbearing, all-pervasive state position. Brexit very, very particularly shrank the influence of the internationalist bureaucracy that is the EU, and had the politicians of the UK not screwed over their fucking voter bases, would have probably shrank the size and complexity of the UK government as well. So no, Brexit is explicitly not fascist. It made things more likely to exist outside of the state or against the state, and shrank the size of the state's bureaucracy, which, again, according to the originators of fascism, Benito Mussolini and Giovanni Gentile, they fucking wanted everything within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state, and Brexit went and created a slightly shrunken, less bureaucratized and less institutionalized form of the state, which explicitly, if you want to be very technical in your language and not use all sorts of connotations, you could even make the argument that Brexit was explicitly anti-fascist because it explicitly shrank the state and made more things likely to be either outside the state or against the state.
Hey,
Moving on.
I'm gonna let it read a little bit more, and then we're gonna move on. Okay.
Yep.
Epstein is probably talking about shorting, and similar tricks. The opportunity to pick up large financial assets in the UK after Brexit created turmoil in the financial and stock markets. It is apt that Epstein uses the term tribal society because the phenomenon that resulted in Brexit and the election of Donald Trump as president of the United States in the same year is the same human phenomenon that led to Gamergate, insularity, reactionary worldviews, and the politics of discontent.
In a way, you are correct in the sense that what they explicitly said just there was that they were against globalism and against international bureaucracy. And given that movements like Gamergate, Comicsgate, and the Phantom Menace are about the individual and, what's more, the self-identifying aspects of their identity that actually describe parts of their identity instead of being tied to demographics, winning out over the all-pervasive bureaucracy that is the infinitely regressive oppressor-oppressed dichotomies of neo-Hegelian post-Frankfurt School bullshit like social justice. Social justice wanted people to focus on internationalist, institutional, normative bureaucracies and or the identities that have no descriptive capability whatsoever and are only the very basic parts of their demographic. And Gamergate, Comicsgate, and the Phantom Menace focus on things that you choose to identify with and choose to develop skill, expertise, or passion for instead of their demographic identity, i.e., nerds have more in common with each other because they're nerds than any number of white people do because they're white, or any number of black people do because they're black, or any number of any other inherent demographic does because of their inherent demographic. Because inherent demographics are not actually descriptive of what a person's actual substantive, meaningful identity is, because substantive, meaningful identities have to do with people's individual interests, individual skills, individual knowledge, individual expertise, etc., instead of shit people are born with that has nothing to do with who they are as a person. Moving on.
Okay, like I said, we're gonna move on after that. So now we're moving on to the stuff I I sent in. Again, it's weird that I sent in articles because I never do that.
I was tired this week.
I'm not faulting you. It's just weird that I did it. All right. So it's originally it's HollywoodReporter.com. DC Studios / Warner Brothers Animation to premiere Batman Night Falls gives sneak peeks of Super Mutant Magic Academy Living the Dream at ANSI Showcase. It's written by Scott Roxborough on May 11th, 2026. Subheader is DC Studios CEO Peter Safran and WB Animation President Sam Register will present the studio's upcoming slate at the International Animation Festival next month. I think the first ever Batman comic I read was actually Nightfall.
The first ever Batman comic I read was Batman Spawn crossover. Somehow we found it randomly at Walmart. It was the first actual comic I ever owned.
First one I owned actually was Superman Fall of Metropolis. It was a 90s comic where he had a mullet. So
I remember the mullet era. Yeah.
Actually looked good in it, to be fair. What was I gonna say? But yeah, I don't have the full. Actually, I might have it now because I went to a con a few years back and bought a bunch of Night Quest, which I think takes place after Nightfall. So
I think so.
Yeah.
In between Breaking the Bat and the
well, it was the one where I think it was covering Jean Paul Valley's 10-year as Batman.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of I was fully I have kind of a connection with Nightfall a bit. I should have taken better care of that comic. Like, I think I left it in my filing cabinet, and it just kind of fell apart over the years because I forgot about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Batman Spawn comic, I'm pretty sure that it eventually fucking vanished into thin air because we kept moving it from random shelf to random shelf, and I don't even know where it is now. I should get another copy at some point.
Yeah. Oh, where was? Oh, right. Okay. Okay. DC fans will fill their boots at this year's ANSI International Animation Film Festival. I've never heard of that before, by the way. ANSI?
I have. It's one of those random industry con things.
Oh, so it's okay. Never mind then. That's the reason why I didn't hear it. Okay. Warner Brothers Animation and DC Studios have unveiled details of its industry showcase, which will include the world premiere of Batman Nightfall Part 1 Nightfall, the new DC Studios multi-part animated film event, as well as exclusive first looks and behind-the-scenes sneak peeks into DC Universe series, including Mr. Miracle, My Adventures with the Green Lantern, Starfire, Creature Commandos, and Batman Caped Crusader.
Oh, so My Adventures with Superman is getting a spin-off?
Yeah, it's also getting a season 3. I just saw the trailer like a few days ago.
Oh, that's good. There's actually quite a lot to recommend about My Adventures with Superman.
Well, I mean, DC's doing better in animation than it has in live action so far.
Yeah, that's the perennial problem of why does no one take notes about what works in animation so they can try to translate it to live action. God damn it! Like Paul Dini and Bruce Timm fucking nailed this in the '90s, and it's still like the Paul Dini Bruce Timm era DC animated universe still not only holds up, but is many people's gold standard for how you adapt comic book media. Period. And yet, no one at Warner Brothers has thought to themselves, We should watch the Paul Dini Bruce Timm DC animated universe and see how much of it we can translate into live action. I swear to fucking God.
Yeah, people are stupid. That's no news.
Yep.
Didn't know Starfire was in some. We did kind of cover Mr. Miracle at one point. Part of why go digital doesn't degrade as much with the ability to copy it. Any errors or corruptions should be able to be solved by comparing what's the same among 9 different ones. I mean, like, I understand, and I think Dalton kind of agrees with me because you do digital too.
Yeah, I especially if it's something I don't know if I actually want to own, then I read it digitally. But that being said, there is nothing quite so wonderful as a really, really nice physical omnibus copy.
Yeah.
Like a really
Well,
good prestige format book is.
I mean, I don't mind the omnibuses or like graphic novels or anything like that, or like a compendium. I prefer like the single issues though. I don't know. I like them.
See, I get single issues for collecting value. When it comes to like reading and displaying on my shelves and shit, I get omnibuses in prestige format. As you well know, given that you made a modest contribution to said shelves, both on my most recent birthday and around Christmas time.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
But Mr. Miracle, we're kind of iffy on, given the information we got about that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Batman Nightfall, produced by WB Animation, DC Studios, and Warner Brother Entertainment, is a 3-feature animated series based on the iconic 1993-1994 Batman story arc, focused on Batman villain Bane, that partly served as inspiration for Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises. Not nearly enough.
Yeah, if they had done a more straight up rendition of Nightfall, I think it would have been a better movie. It is a real shame we lost Heath Ledger, because I think that if Joker had been allowed to be a recurring villain within the Nolanverse, Dark Knight Rises would have been a much better movie.
But
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
yeah, okay. Where was I? Okay. Peter Safran, co-chairman and co-CEO at DC Studios, and Sam Register, president at Warner Bros. Animation, Cartoon Network Studios, and Hanna-Barbera Studios Europe, will host the studio's Annecy panel together with executive producers Tom King, Mr. Miracle, Rick Morales, Creature Commandos, Jake Wyatt, My Adventures with Green Lantern, Josie Campbell, Starfire. Starfire with an exclamation point. I feel like that should be noted for some reason. And Matt Bean's DC Superpowers. Beyond the DC verse, Cartoon Network will give a deep dive into its new Adult Swim series, Super Mutant Magic Academy. I'm somewhat interested in that, I'm not going to lie.
I have so many conflicted feelings here.
What'd you say?
I have so many conflicted feelings about that as a thing.
Warner Brothers. Sorry.
Because on the one hand, that sounds like a title like that almost has an anime vibe to it, which is good. But on the other hand, there are so many ways they could screw up having one school for superpowers, mutants, and the magic. Those are 3 very different things.
That's what makes it. Oh, that one. If it's supposed to be hold on. We'll preview their 2 original half-hour comedies, Living the Dream and Keeping Up with the Joneses. Okay. The former, produced by Hanna-Barbera Studios Europe for Netflix, is an 8-part workplace sitcom about two best friends navigating dead-end social media jobs at an eco startup called EcoFood in London. Keeping Up with the Joneses, made for Adult Swim, follows the Newberry family as they try to keep up with their staggeringly wealthy Dallas neighbors, including the one next door, Jerry Jones, owner of the Dallas Cowboys.
Maybe I'm getting old, but those last two sound very, very hipster.
Yep. Well, they're comedies in modern day. Hold on.
Those two feel like very insular ideas that only someone from fucking California or Portland could come up with. Like, tell me you're upper middle class without telling me. Brainstormer. Oh dear.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Where was I?
You just covered the two random hipster shows. The latter of the two set in Dallas, I think.
Yeah, they do feel very like hipstery, right?
Which, to be fair, you can do. Like, it's not impossible to make hipster characters work. I mean, one of my all-time favorite shows is Sci-Fi's The Magicians, and and the entire cast of The Magicians is a bunch of high-functioning, genius-level millennial college kid hipsters with unspeakable levels of trauma. So, like, you can do hipster characters. It's just it feels a little bit like Velma in the sense that only someone from like a upper middle class hipster enclave like Portland or Berkeley or like LA would be able to find this funny or relatable in any way whatsoever. Because most people, you would throw that kind of hipster word salad at them and they would have absolutely no idea what the fuck you were smoking.
Mm.
It it,
Uh, all
it
right. So,
feels a bit like content made entirely by posh cunts for posh cunts.
okay. Last thing then. 2026 Annecy Film Festival runs June 21st, June 27th.
Hmm.
Right.
So about a month before Comic Con.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Comic Con usually happens like the week of my birthday. It always makes me laugh. Granted, I don't often get what I would consider birthday presents from Comic Con anymore, but it's still funny to me.
Okay. I'm just getting the other thing ready. Guys, I felt this was kind of important to talk about. Uh, so this is from Marvel.com, written by Marvel, published May 11th, 2026. The Midnight Universe plunges the Marvel mythos into darkness. Uh,
In other words, they're ripping off Absolute.
which the Absolute Universe ripped off the second Ultimate Universe prior, so.
Yeah, I kind of wish they would just stop and devote their creative resources to their mainline continuities, for God's sake.
Well, okay, to be fair, I like the Absolute. I don't think you've ever actually given me a straight answer on why you don't like the Absolute Universe.
Well, it's because okay, it's partly because um the existence of the Absolute Universe is tied back to Dark Knight's Metal, and I really don't like what they did with Dark Knight's Metal. And
No,
two, it all feels kind of nihilistic is the thing. Like
what? Are you, I
like
mean, to be fair,
the grim darkification of it is really kind of annoying. And like I said, again, the more effort is that's spent in the direction of the Absolute Universe, the less they're actually focusing on their mainline continuity. And I could see a world not too distant from here where the Absolute Universe becomes so popular that it just becomes the mainline continuity again. The same mistake they made with the New 52. Brainstormer, you there?
yeah, no, sorry. I thought you had more. Okay, never mind.
No, got distracted because my kitty wanted attention. Again.
Okay. Uh, so Marvel Comics presents a terrifying new publishing line from a superstar lineup of creators kicking off in August with Midnight X-Men by Jonathan Hickman and Matteo De La Fonte. I think they should focus their resources on the main universe. Sort of a bad way to look at it, like saying that unless they have a very specific niche, smaller characters in Marvel and DC and Marvel slash DC. And okay, well, I think he's still writing, so
Mhm.
and smaller settings should be disbanded and the resources folded into the big names. Grant Turtle said.
I well the problem is if the industry were healthy and the big two were not constantly be shitting their own continuity so often, I wouldn't mind the existence of something like the Absolute Universe. But the um the big two comic book universes haven't been firing on all cylinders since like what 2015, and even then they kept constantly rebooting the continuity. So like I I really feel like instead of developing a new like alternate universe, they should just fucking devote their resources to unfucking what they've fucked for the last decade and a half. But that might just be me.
Um, Not impossible, but highly doubt the Absolute would ever usurp the main ones. More likely, it becomes another Batman who laughs.
Yeah, that's what they said about the British invasion Vertigo stuff never supplanting the mainline continuity either, and then the New 52 happened and did basically that. And then they tried to fold Watchmen into the main continuity, and we got Doomsday Clock. I'm not worried about that out of nowhere. I'm worried about that because this is a thing DC has done multiple times, and it worries me. Moving on.
To be clear, I mean how he was cool at first, but got old and overplayed. That's fair.
What was cool at first?
Batman Who Laughs. That's what he meant when he brought it up.
Yeah. Again, there are some decent ideas in Dark Knight's Metal somewhere, but the way they were done and the stuff that was actually done with them really didn't work. But it was popular enough to justify the existence of the Absolute Universe. And the Absolute Universe.
Okay, well, I think it's a bit unfounded because what I've got, and I've read the Absolute Universe, and it's pretty good actually. Mainly, it's done a lot of good work for Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
isn't Absolute Wonder Woman? Wasn't she raised by Cersei?
yes. Also in the underworld, she is the princess of the underworld.
Yeah, baby's first edgelord.
Dylan, you're away from your mic. I didn't catch any of that.
I said, yeah, that makes sense. Baby's first edgelord.
Okay, whatever.
Am I still too quiet?
I mean, you're still a little bit.
Okay. But moving on.
Okay, well now you can clearer.
Mm-hmm.
Light had its turn for over 80 years. Marvel heroes have inspired hope, and this August, that hope dies in the shadows of the Midnight Universe, a new publishing line where top creators unleash haunting new visions of Marvel's greatest icons. The nightmare begins with 3 titles: Midnight X-Men by Jonathan Hickman, Ultimate Spider-Man, and Matteo De Fontaine, Nova Centurion. I'd never heard of Nova Centurion before this.
Because I'm pretty sure the idea of a Nova Centurion they're explicitly making up for this. I think it's just their version of Nova.
No, it's not for the no. That's a credit for, I believe, the artist or another writer for Midnight X-Men with Jonathan Hickman. Like it's another Marvel title. I'd never heard of that title before now.
Yeah, but this is the other thing about Absolute that they seem to be, or Marvel seems to be trying to copy here. Given how often we both have railed against nihilism in stuff like The Boys and stuff like Watchmen and shit like that, I really don't want to reward them going down this route. Because telling a dark story when the story organically winds up there is one thing, but explicitly trying to be grimdark from the off is not usually a good way to get good stories. It's a good way to shit your continuity with nihilism.
Okay. Jantro, have you not? You know what? I'm not gonna ask because it sounds rude if I ask this, but the whole point of the Absolute Universe is that well, for one thing, it's created from Darkseid's own energy. Like,
I thought it was the Barabbas dragon there from Dark Knight's Metal rather than Dark Knight.
No, that shit's been done for years.
Yeah, but Can
I explain it, please?
Go ahead.
It was created by Darkseid, who was imbued with the power of the Spectre. It's a long story there. And created like kind of a dimension outside of the normal one where instead of being powered by optimism, hope, and all that, Um, it's powered by Darkseid's energy, where strife, conflict, and perseverance. Um, Basically, the whole idea is taking elements away from the core, like the prime characters, and seeing how they work without those elements that define them. Like with Absolute Wonder Woman, it's her ties to the Amazons. She's raised by Circe in the underworld. Um, with Batman, he is a civil engineer. He's not rich. Superman, he was raised on Krypton before it blew up, actually. Um, and it's just like when it's it's built around on this idea of that evil, in a sense, is kind of on top, and the good has to fight a lot harder to persevere. It's not pessimistic. It's not the original Ultimate Universe, basically. Like from the 2000s, So.
I don't see how that can exist without it becoming just a nihilistic circle jerk.
Don, to be fair, your whole baseline is being like, I understand it, and honestly, if it goes down that route, I will eat my words. But so far, to be fair, they're building it slowly. They're taking their time with it. They're not rushing it like Marvel's been doing. I don't think they're replacing anything like the originals done. Giant Turtle, sorry.
Yes, but I didn't think they were gonna weave Watchmen into the mainline continuity and then Doomsday Clock happened.
Okay, I feel like we just gotta wait and see if what happens instead of being like basically bitter about it already.
I've known DC for a very long time, and they have a fantastic ability to take the wrong lessons from things and also to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. So it's excuse me while I press X to doubt, but I do in fact press X to doubt.
Okay, I'm not saying don't doubt. I'm just saying like wait until they actually fuck it up.
Fair, but it seems like it's encouraging the worst aspects of modern writing is the thing.
How much have you actually read of any of the Absolute titles?
I haven't because
Okay.
I do not think there can be anything good that comes from this premise. Letting
Okay,
Darkseid essentially play God and create a evil universe.
it's not. It's technically not evil, but
technically, but then especially because like Earth 3 already exists, like the fucking crime syndicate and shit.
okay, can we? I'm not trying to have an argument here. I see your point. I'm not discrediting it. I just find the Absolute Universe to be very interesting. That's it. Okay.
Well, I hope it's not just a case of you projecting better writing than they're actually delivering.
Maybe if you actually read any, you'd see my point. But we're here. So anyway,
you have a tendency, and to be fair, I do this as well sometimes, where I see the potential in what they're doing, and then they don't do it, and I feel like a dumbass.
Like I said, I will eat my words when they actually fuck up, but they're not doing that right now. So.
Mm-hmm. But this is what DC always does. So.
Okay. Midnight Fantastic Four by Benjamin Percy, Punisher, and Kev Walker, Infernal Hulk, and Midnight Spider-Man by Philip Kennedy Johnson, Infernal Hulk, and in his exciting Marvel Comics debut, artist C. Trunk.
Okay, at risk of being very cliche, at risk of being very clichédly myself here, why are they not using the fucking Midnight Suns and the other supernatural characters? It seems like the supernatural characters would be very, very well suited to this particular.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I heard the announcement of this, right? Like Midnight Universe, like it just makes sense to center it more around like the more like darker, monstrous
yeah, like
the
Ghost
supernatural thing.
Rider and Werewolf by Night and Blade and yeah, especially because like the Midnight Suns have existed for a fucking long time now. And hell, when was the last time Damian Hellstrom even got his own book? I want to say it was like the 90s.
Hold on, I'll look that up because I'm actually curious myself now. But yeah, it's weird that I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I don't mind like doing like a more horror theme like superhero universe. That's kind of to me that's very interesting, and we actually kind of have done that. But
yeah, and I realize I'm me, so my question will always be where's my magic users at? But this seems very much like a fucking. This seems like a premise that would be gift wrapped for like a darker, twisted, more like satanic-y version of Doctor Strange or Damian Hellstrom or Ghost Rider or these, especially because it's called the Midnight Universe, and the Midnight Suns are a long-standing fucking team for Marvel. Also, I realize I'm a broken record for this, but Marvel also did essentially this once already in the Max universe, or the Max books. Thor Max was actually really fucking good. I haven't read the other Max books. I did get my brother the Punisher Max book omnibus at one point. I don't know if he ever read it though.
So okay, question. Do you want to know his last appearance in Marvel Comics or his last solo series in Marvel Comics?
His last solo book.
Like Hellstrom, Son of Satan, published 2006, 2007.
Okay, so he did have a slightly more recent one around the time of like Planet Hulk. Granted, I can't imagine it was very good because I haven't heard anything about it, and 2007 was a terrible year for Marvel Comics. You had Civil War, you had One More Day, you had World War Hulk. It's just a absolutely terrible year for Marvel Comics. But I am glad that Damian had a series. You know who else would be really interesting to do from a Midnight Universe perspective? Moon Knight. A darker, edgier, even more like twisted and insane version of Moon Knight. Like maybe I forget what there was a book that me and Dominic Powell and Eglinton covered on our What You Reading book series. It was a book about like a guy who commits suicide and is saved by a demon, and the demon convinces him to essentially become a vigilante serial killer. Like something like that, but with the Moon Knight mythos would be interesting. Did we lose Brainstormer again?
Sorry, yeah, I had to handle something real quick. I'm back.
Okay.
Let me read a little bit. To be fair, when I heard about this and I looked into it a little more, honestly, I was very. You can imagine my disappointment. I know you're far more disappointed than I am, Don, given your whole thing.
I realize this is me being very, very stereotypically myself, but given that I do go where my magic user's at for pretty much everything, this in particular Sounds
Like, why
essentially
use that? I don't get it. Why use that title when it has such
if
a
you're not going to tie it to the most famous midnight related thing that Marvel's ever done, the Midnight Suns.
yeah? Like, it's so like that feels deliberate. Actually, you know.
Not, not to mention, but if you genuinely wanted to do what the Absolute Universe does for DC, but with Marvel, start it in October. Start it in October. Have it be a more like um DC Vertigo esque um series focused on the darker, more twisted, more quote unquote satanic parts of the Marvel mythos,
Yeah.
and then make like the Midnight Suns the like the series um that launch this particular universe. Like do one for every like major character on the Midnight Suns. Do one for Damian Hellstrom. Do one for Blade.
Um,
Do one for like Moon Knight. Do one
although
for Into the Living Mummy. Do one
you
for
know,
Werewolf by Night.
there is, to be fair, I have seen a few different like analog horror series on YouTube that have done like the superheroes scary. Usually they turn them into turn them into monsters. But one particular one I have set that I've seen uh, so far, which is for DC, um, but actually just treats it as like, okay, well, it's about Superman. He looks more like an alien, but still does Superman stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a lot more interesting.
So like Superman crossed with like District 9,
Yeah, kind of.
sort of like what we did with Miracle almost.
Yeah. Good chance the guy making it just never knew about Midnight Suns, or this is some petty spite against them. But it's possible that that was the original proposal and someone changed it. Oh, I honestly, given Marvel's editorial, I don't know
Yeah,
that's possible.
speaking of the Big Two's capacity to shoot themselves in the fucking head,
Jesus Christ, who the fuck is running the editorial now? Is it still like
it was
uh
it's not Dan Didio anymore. It's
no, I'm talking about Marvel. I'm not talking about DC.
CB Sobolski, I think.
He's still running it?
I the last I checked, the last I knew anything about somebody else taking over the editorial for Marvel, it was CB Sobolski.
Okay, well, clearly he hasn't done a good job, but um, it really depends on. I'm not like the. I don't know. It has to be a particular niche for me to really like analog horror. Giant Turtle.
I think you should give Marvel Hornets look, Brainstormer, because I know it is before your time, but it is a really good like YouTube based like horror project
Mm.
or horror adjacent project.
As long as it's not Marvel Ruins, I don't like that one. Uh,
No, I think that's something completely different.
it's a comic. It's supposed to be. Well, it's the opposite of if everyone remembers Marvels, by Kurt Busiek.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, do I have that actually? I should get that. It was like Marvel's version of Kingdom Come.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, send it with a TLDR. I would appreciate that during troll. Um, okay, a big problem besides the culture war stuff is that these companies, entertainment or otherwise, are full of suits who don't know and often don't care about the customer base and how the products are made.
And then you throw the cultural war stuff and the ideological and institutional capture on top of the suits just not giving a fuck, and then it becomes a deliberately spiting our audience thing.
Yeah.
Which, to be
Anyway,
fair, as much as I have my reservations about the Absolute Universe, it doesn't appear to be deliberately spiting its audience. Other than the aforementioned worry I have about the nihilism thing, but you know.
I still disagree with the nihilistic thing. Dark, unpredictable, unmissable. The Midnight Universe draws in longtime fans and newcomers alike to enter a terrifying new world where anything can happen. Interconnected by rich lore building, Marvel's most definitive modern creators are given free reign to reimagine heroes with shocking twists. Okay, you guys were kind of doing that already with the the new Ultimate Universe. Like,
wasn't that also kind of the conceit behind All New, All Different in the first place? Hence the title of what it was, you know?
yeah, okay.
Like,
Well,
this is the other problem I have. Marvel and DC are both so obsessed with reinventing themselves, they completely miss the fact that all the actual fan base of the big two want is just good versions of what already existed. We don't want things to be different. We want things to be better written. Those two things are not necessarily the same. Not saying you can't play a little bit fast and loose here and there if you want to, or if you have a really good idea for something. But like, you, it, it's the whole like defense thing of if you can't speak, if you don't have the basic understanding of how to tell a good story in the fucking first place, you can't really reinvent things. If you can't tell things on the straightforward, easy setting, then you definitely shouldn't be. You got to walk before you can run. You got to make sure you can tell good story within the premise you're working with before you think you're smart enough to start playing with the premise.
Okay. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
I kind of cut off the. Okay. Marvel's most definitive modern creators given free reign to reimagine heroes with shocking twists and chilling transformations in boundaryless, creator-driven storytelling that will keep readers on edge issue after issue. Okay, that was supposed to be the Ultimate Universe too, so.
Also, I'm not sure to what degree I trust the modern creatives that work for Marvel.
Well, Jonathan Hickman's pretty good. He actually wrote a pretty decent Fantastic Four run after Civil War, and did some other like small stuff too. So
Yeah, but even then, I'm worried slightly about the George Lucas Patty Jenkins of it all, i.e., sometimes what makes certain creatives good at their jobs is that they do have a team of like editors and oversight backing them up. And I'm wondering, will we come to regret seeing
I think there's
an
like there's like a tightrope you got to dance with that. To
yeah,
be fair,
yeah, you definitely do, and
we've seen what
ju-
happens when there's like too much oversight on things, and
yeah,
that
the studio meddling is most definitely a thing, and these things are occasionally a double-edged sword. But I'm also just pointing that out of like even creatives that you think of as really really good probably shouldn't be left to their own devices because a lot of the time, quite a lot of what makes these people be as good as they are is that um they do have people they can bounce ideas off. Another great example is Neil Gaiman. Like Neil Gaiman in the 80s and 90s when he had people like Karen Berger and Sam Keefe kind of shoring up his weaknesses was much better than Neil Gaiman when he became a household name and so everyone just lets him do whatever he wants to do. And Lord knows Neil Gaiman, especially recently, just cannot stop himself from untelling all the good stories he did because he wants things to be more true to his vision, quote unquote.
okay. Moving on.
Yep.
All right. The X-Men no longer fight for acceptance; they hunger for blood. Fantastic Four venture into the unknown. For the record, X-Men have fought vampires before in the mainline continuity too. So
Also, wouldn't oh like I get it. I didn't register the vampires thing. I
well,
assumed
they'll
they
they'll
would just
describe. I think they'll describe it more as we go on. So it's just like I think
okay,
they're
fair enough.
yeah. Fantastic Four venture into the unknown, not to save the world, but to unleash terror upon it. And Spider-Man discovers that with great power comes something monstrous.
Didn't they already kind of do that with the mutation disease storyline?
Yeah, Man Spider. It's been done before, so also like there've been other like horror variant versions of Spider-Man. Like there's a Spider's Man, which if I remember the origin correctly, Peter Parker got accidentally eaten by a bunch of radioactive spiders, and his consciousness fused with them, and thus they all kind of swarmed together to form a body underneath a costume of
Then
Spider.
there's the demon Spider-Man. Peter ends up going to hell and inspiring this one demon dude, and like the demon takes on a Spider-Man shaped form and tries to do good, but of course it's a demon, so it kind of fucks up there. Then there's also the Japanese Spider-Man that's like also demon powered and has like a spider mech.
Ah, yeah, yeah, man. Yeah. So really, they created a whole new character for him way back when.
Hmm.
Anyway, from the original new universe to two ultimate universes, Marvel has a long history of creating inspiring, bold worlds filled with unforgettable characters and fresh ideas that feel new yet recognizable at the same time. Editor in Chief CB. Okay, explain. With the new Midnight line, we've given some of our most outstanding creators the opportunity to delve into the darkest corners of their imaginations and birth some of the creepiest.
Bless you.
Thank you. Most terrifying takes on the Marvel Universe you've ever seen.
Okay, and that's all well and good, especially if you have the foresight to release this in October, god damn you. But I must once again be true to myself here and ask, it's called the Midnight Universe. You're very much going the like supernatural horror route.
Why
So
not focus on the supernatural of Marvel?
well, yes. Especially because like imagine a modern day version of Tomb of Dracula. Like imagine they brought back Tomb of Dracula for this.
I did look into that actual series, by the way. Like I looked up like wiki descriptions of it. It's actually a pretty good. It comes across as a very good series, actually.
Yes. Tomb of Dracula is some good shit.
Right. Funny enough, I did. So since they got the three titles, I thought because I'm me, and it's always going to happen, right?
Mm.
I did some revising of my own.
Of course you did. We
Shout-
we are not beating the self-referential allegations this week, folks. We
well,
we
no, I
both
just,
we both have we both have defaulted to our usual default settings, and it's not looking good from here on out, folks.
well, to be fair, I can't really think we do any other ideas that we haven't done before.
We
But
are what we are at the end of the day, but
I
but
just
for those playing the drinking game at home, I hope you don't die of alcohol poisoning.
is Penny Parker Japanese? I know she's a reference to Evangelion, but
I don't know,
I thought she
honestly.
was okay. I might be wrong. I thought she was Korean. I don't know why. No, I'm
Also,
thinking.
speaking of Spider-Man horror ideas you could have gone with, that would kind of fit this particular universe. Given that one of the most infamous Spider-Man storylines is One More Day, have Mephisto be involved somewhere. I don't
Oh,
care
whoa,
where, I don't care how, but
wait, wait, wait.
put him somewhere. related to Spider-Man because
Well, okay, it's not really horror themed, but someone actually wrote is doing like a web comic on Twitter or X or whatever the fuck you want to call it. I don't care shit. Where they're telling the story of One More Day from the perspective, like after the events, kind of retroactively, like retconning it.
yeah, after Mephisto does his reality bending shit.
Where Peter gets to team up with Doctor Strange, Ghost Rider, Scarlet Witch, and Doctor Doom to force Mephisto to kind of fix the deal, but instead he gets his adult daughter, who was raised in hell by Mephisto, who has powers similar to a Ghost Rider, but also her spider powers. And she goes by the title, the code name Hellspinner.
Which speaking of that, if you wanted to do a Spider-Man related horror thing, and for what like assuming you wanted to give people what they want with regards to the fan service, have the main character of your Spider-Man storyline be like the soul of MJ and Peter's daughter that never was.
I think she's supposed to be like. I think it's supposed to be May Parker, right? Like
And
May.
incidentally, you're gonna have to send me that webcomic because this sounds.
It's like I said. It's on Twitter. Maybe just type in like in the search bar, Hellspinner.
Yeah, why in the name of all that is holy and unholy is this not in the actual continuity? Although to be fair, and I will point this out because I never tire of pointing this out, Doctor Strange should be able to solo Mephisto himself because people for normies don't really understand this, but I am not a normie and so I am pedantic about this. But Mephisto is the lamest ass of all Marvel's Devil insert characters, of which there's like 7 or 8 of them. Like there are several Marvel characters that are supposed to be inserts for the devil, and all of them, if all of Marvel's Devil characters were like sucked into like the negative zone, if all Marvel's Devil characters were like sucked into a prison in the negative zone, Mephisto would be the one that would get bent over in the shower by all the other like Mephisto is the one that would get beaten up by all the other devil characters. I don't understand people's obsession with Mephisto. So in theory, if we're going by like normal characterization and normal power scaling for Doctor Strange, he should be able to solo Mephisto, but I understand that the team up makes a better story. So anyway, moving on.
Yeah. What was I fucking But yeah, since I have 3 titles here, I redid those titles to be more fitting of Midnight, Supernatural and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote brief descriptions, kind of. I did this off the top of my head, like today, actually. I wrote these today. So Howling Commandos, which is, if anyone's seen Love, Death, and Robots, and if you haven't, why are you watching this goddamn podcast? Go watch that.
Wait until the episode is done and then go watch that.
There's I think it's in season 1. I might be wrong, but there's one called Shifters, which revolves around werewolves that are in the army.
Oh, yep. I thought you were going for the Russian Portal to Hell episode, but yeah, that's a good one too.
But yeah, it's the Howling Commandos title revolves around it being a team made up of like the various werewolves of Marvel. You got Warwolf, Manwolf, Wolfsbane, and Werewolf by Night.
Interesting. I wouldn't have gone all werewolf if it were me, but
Marvel already did that with like the Howling Commandos and Old Spider-Man. So I just felt like if it's it's Howling Commandos, so I just figure like werewolves. So
I mean, it's not a bad idea. I'm just saying, like, that wouldn't have been where I would have gone first. But fair enough.
then you got Shield, the Night Shift. It's the best one I come up with right now. Again, top of my
Okay.
head. X Files meets.
Basically your Marvelified version of Creature Commandos is what I'm guessing.
Well, no, that's just called the Howling Commandos. That's what it's called. The other title is calling the Shield the Night Shift.
Mm-hmm.
X. I don't have like a specific idea. It's just like X Files meets Supernatural. That's it.
Okay.
The last one, off cuff, like I said, just so tell me how this could work. Morbius, Blood of Dracula. How I wrote the description of it. Castlevania meets Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay, I had an idea about this many years ago. I think when Morbius came out. Because here's the thing about Morbius. He has always annoyed me because the only reason he exists is because the comics got authority for bad supernatural shit for a while. But what you could do for Morbius and would actually make him a very interesting character is imagine this for a second. He goes to the Darkhold wondering if something in the Darkhold might work to cure his science vampirism, but instead what happens is he contracts supernatural vampirism on top of his science vampirism and essentially becomes for vampires what Captain America is to normal humans. He essentially becomes a super vampire because he has the science vampire thing and then he stacks supernatural vampirism on top of it and they stack, like they amplify each other. That's an idea I've always had for Morbius that I think could really work. Because it would bring him into the fore of the supernatural vampires while also making use of his unique position as a science vampire for all these years first. Kind of reminds me of that idea we had for when we were rewriting the New Warriors, the ideas we had for B negative there. I'm going to assume Brainstormer's trying to write shit down.
No, Giant brought up Vampire by Night, and I was looking her up. I had no idea that was.
Yeah, Nina Price. Vampire by Night. Obviously, a reference to Mina Harker from Bram Stoker's Dracula and
Apparently
Vincent
she's already. Huh. That's weird. Apparently she's already in the MCU.
Is she? Where the fuck did?
She's played by Laurel Donnelly.
Where? Was she in Werewolf by Night?
Yeah.
Okay, I must have missed. I need. Not that I needed another reason to, but I need to rewatch Werewolf by Night now. Which just goes to show just how fucking awesome Werewolf by Night is and why it baffles me that Marvel has not done any follow-ups to Werewolf by Night since Werewolf by Night came out.
Right. Oh wait. Wait. Laurel Donnelly. What?
Well, we're tumbling down a rabbit hole, or I guess in this case, a fang puncture hole, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh no, she was also Bloodstone. Okay.
Okay, I was gonna say because I remember Elsa being in Werewolf by Night, but I didn't remember Nina
That's
showing up
weird.
at any point.
It's weird because it says that she's supposed to be playing that character in like a Collider article I looked at. Anyway,
Okay, well, I'm assuming that Collider article came out before the actual
2020.
thing
It
premiered,
came out 20. It came out in 2022.
and they assumed that's who she was playing instead of Elsa Bloodstone.
She's Werewolf by Night's daughter who was bitten by a vampire, if I recall. Said she was his niece. So
It it depends on the continuity.
of course it does.
Hmm.
Anyway, more will be unveiled in the months ahead, but today the main cover of Midnight X-Men #1 by Dyke Ruan is revealed. Befitting the line's mysterious, ominous aura, the main covers of the Midnight titles will be cloaked covers, partially obscured, with the full arc revealed with a turn of the page. Oh, great
Are
gimmicks!
they at least going to focus on the members of the X-Men that are like, supernatural horror coded? Like I know Nightcrawler is half demon, and they never really address that. They could do some really interesting things addressing that. I doubt they're going to because I've become very cynical about the big two in recent years. But they
Hey,
could do some interesting things there.
with the exception of debut issues, the full arc will remain shrouded in shadow, only revealing themselves to readers daring enough to pick them up on the stands. Here's the cover. We have Vampire Queen. I'm assuming Queen because, well, why wouldn't she be? Vampire Queen Storm and
Okay.
a priest Nightcrawler, which again makes sense because he actually is a priest.
Yeah. he- and again, I hope they do interesting things with the fact that Nightcrawler is actually technically half demon in the comics.
Might be a vampire slaying priest, given that he's carrying a sword. So
Yeah, like Nightcrawler as a half demon Van Helsing would be interesting.
God
That
damn it, I
that
don't think
that
about.
actually does vaguely sound cool.
Yeah. I just remembered to send. Okay, it's fair. The clock strikes midnight, and it's the dark dawn of a new era, beginning with Midnight X-Men. Shadows of New York are stalked by vampires and the mutant empires. Sword of Damocles hangs over the peace between these two species and the factions within them. An outright war is brewing, and the unturned will be caught in the crossfire. Huh.
Okay, I will say I am slightly more willing to check this out than I am to check out Absolute. Um, but I still I I realize this is me being me and me being selfish and shit, but you're doing a Midnight universe in which the Midnight Suns are not the main characters for some reason, and I think this was a mistake. Just please tell me you're going to introduce them later at some point, please.
Probably not.
I'm hoping that the Midnight universe does at least well enough to justify a Midnight Suns, because if they don't, I'm gonna be annoyed.
Mm.
I realize I live in perpetual annoyance to some degree, still.
Uh, on returning to the X-Men to deliver another visionary reinvention of mutant kind, Hickman said, "I'm so enthusiastic about this project. It's the most excited I've been in years. The conceit of Midnight X-Men aligns perfectly with the kinds of stories I like to tell. It has a rich, open-ended mythology that equally mixes old and new ideas into something that feels both familiar and original. Midnight."
Okay, I will note, in case anyone doesn't know, there's already a what if, which is what if um Wolverine was Lord of the Vampires. So I'm not sure how original um not sure how original mutation equal vampire is in this instance. Not saying it can't work. I'm just saying if they're trying to sell this on originality, I shouldn't be able to pull an example from just memory that involves this. Anyway, moving forward.
Okay. Midnight Fantastic Four #1. This one I really don't get, to be fair. Then in Midnight Fantastic Four, an obsessive scientist delves into the secrets of the universe, perhaps best left unknown to mankind, leaving himself and three others warped in strange and horrifying ways. What horrible secrets lie in the new dimensions they have discovered, and can humanity survive the discovery?
They're basically doing a mad scientist plus Lovecraft is what they're doing.
Either that or like
which to be fair, Reed is clueless enough that he would accidentally his way into Eldritch horrors.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
hell, the man found Galactus dying on a random planet, and instead of letting Galactus die because he destroys fucking planets to feed, Reed saves his ass, and then the Shi'ar show up and go, "Wait, you what? Galactus was finally dying and you healed him?" On trial for the non-murder of Galactus, Reed. So, like, I can see the idea of Reed's -3 wisdom score biting him in the ass so hard that it results in Lovecraftian bullshit. That does feel very Reed Richards to me. Still doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be good, but on further consideration, it makes more sense than I originally thought it would.
really, I was getting more of a Event Horizon kind of description here.
Or the Black Hole.
I don't know what that is.
It's a 80s Disney movie that essentially has a similar premise, except a little bit less explicitly, because you can't really do hell in a Disney movie, even in the 80s. But,
Hunchback of Notre Dame. Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yes, yeah, but even then, they didn't show. It's not like Frollo makes an alliance with hell.
No, but he is condemned to hell, if you remember.
Right, but mostly in the religious sense, not really in the explicitly supernatural sense.
Fair enough. Didn't he win the trial of whether or not he should have revived Galactus, including with Odin's testimony? I've never read it. So
I would have to read it again. It's been a while since I read it.
On getting the chance to explore his darkest impulses, Percy explained, "You've read my work. You didn't know dark, destructive plans. To me, it's always midnight." Percy explained, "When Hickman called me, it was from a landline in the basement of an abandoned house, with the wires cut, blood poured out from the receiver into my ear. I said yes." Okay.
And I realize this is also an illegal move, but I think we've handled the what if a Fantastic Four had like Eldritch ties better in Lionhearted with the Astonishing Five.
Dude.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like that's our version of The Simpsons did it. Is we did it better already. Well,
to be fair, this does really come across as we kind of didn't make a Marvel horror, somewhat horror themed Marvel universe. Now I'm thinking about it.
Well, yeah, because because my meddling was involved, the universe ended up being very heavy on the magic side.
Also,
And
I have a love for like old monster movies and stuff. So,
yeah, there are many homages to the Universal movie monsters.
well, not just them, like slasher stuff. Well, actually, slasher stuff doesn't really. Never mind. Anyway, uh, when I imagine the other version of Marvel, a terrifying poisoned universe. Okay, so we have the Cancerverse already done.
Yeah, for all the talk of originality, I'm just seeing lots of unintentional derivation here. Unless
Honestly,
it is intentional, in which case, if it's actually intentional and you're going to reference all that shit that already exists, then good on you.
they're probably not.
True, but I will leave this avenue open. They can redeem themselves if they are doing it on purpose and if they are doing so knowingly. I don't
Uh,
think that's the case because the big two recently have mastered the art of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, but they could basically pull a Gaiman Sandman with the pre-established shit they're borrowing from if they were smart and if
uh,
they gave a shit about continuity, which I know is a hard sell in the year of our Lord 2026.
I was gonna fucking shit. Okay. When I imagine, my mind immediately went to the Fantastic Four. This is a title I've always loved, but would never be allowed to write otherwise. Now, I could lean into my worst instincts and reimagine them as one of cosmic, Lovecraftian dread. I am joined uh, in this by the visionary Kev Walker, who is hard at work bringing a new origin story to Marvel's first family to screaming life. I can't wait to share a nightmare with you. Okay, the guy's laying it on a bit thick.
A bit, yes, but
All right, Midnight Spider-Man by Philip Kennedy Johnson and Skitronic. Oh, okay. This comes out in October.
okay,
Fantastic
good
Four
on
comes
you.
out.
People,
Fantastic Four comes out in September. Why does X Men come out in August? Then I don't. That makes no.
dumbasses. They could they could have very easily made it like they could have very easily made it such that all the books could have come out in October. Considering they're different books, they could all be a monthly and get their start in October. Dumbasses. You could you could even make this a seasonal like Simpsons Treehouse of Horror thing and have one book come out one year in October, another book come out another year in October, and so on.
That would take too long. To be fair.
True, but it would be making actual use of the resources at your disposal instead of being dumbasses. Use the tools that are in front. Use what life gives you, guys. It's really not that hard. Make you sometimes the like straightforward, obvious, so obvious that most people wouldn't think to do it thing is that way because it's the right answer. Sometimes some answers are the default answer because they're the correct answer. Not always, mind you, but a larger percentage of the time than modern writers seem to think. Some answers are really common and straightforward because they're correct. No need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel works fine, is what I'm saying.
All right. And in Midnight Spider-Man, a young Peter Parker is transformed into a hideous spider hybrid by the ruthless Oscorp Corporation, Main Spider-Man 2, and Ultimate Spider-Man. In
and the
their
mutation disease storyline, and
what I'm saying is they're mixing it because, like in the Ultimate Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man, the spider came from Oscorp. So,
yeah.
but yeah, also man, spider, mutation, all that. Yeah, just
Mm.
so again, nothing original. When Oscorp began to use the secrets unlocked by his mutation to create more human-animal hybrids. Main
Actually,
Spider.
aren't they doing the mutation disease in Brand New Day as well, or at least some
No,
version
yeah,
of it?
yeah. Yeah, they are.
Which, on the one hand, is good for synergy, but it's bad in the sense that you're trying to sell this as original.
Uh, the work we're doing right now on the Midnight Line feels like history being made. No, it's not. Johnson shared. We're all bringing creator-owned sensibilities to our projects. We're redefining boundaries. We're reinventing these timeless characters in a way that's never been done before. Yes, it has. Midnight is nothing like the main line. Nothing like the Ultimate Line. Well, you'll see things in these books that shock you. I doubt it.
You're really not as see. This is the problem with the fucking ego, like the ego tripping they're doing here. If you're gonna be that flippant about shit, you're gonna need to get the goods to back it up. And I could be wrong, and if we're wrong, then so be it. But you don't seem to actually have the goods to back up what you're saying. You keep doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on originality, but as we just outlined, anyone who's actually familiar with the continuity of the universe you're playing in can think of several times and in several ways that shit like this has happened before. Hell, Spider-Man Fever is an explicitly like supernatural horror based Spider-Man story that guest stars Doctor Strange. It kind of has a similar sort of vibe too. So like this might be more original if you bothered to. If Marvel editorial had the good sense to keep a like lore Bible handy, and two, if they required that you read it.
I was going to point out, the ideas I came off the top of my head were fairly original in the sense that, they touched upon actual midnight shit.
Yep. And again, like the fact that someone got it in their heads to call this the Midnight Universe, and no one in Marvel editorial went, we probably should tie this into the Midnight Sun somehow, considering that they're one of our oldest and most well-regarded like supernatural teams. But that would require, again, Marvel actually having the good sense to keep an editorial like lore Bible handy, and two, actually require that the creatives who, because here's the thing, if these ideas being derivative in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing, but I wonder what they could have come up with if they did have to hold themselves to the same standards of Marvel back when it was still good and back when editorial gave a shit about things like having a consistent world Bible and shit. Because, like, you could, and again, I want to point this out, you could basically do with your stories what Neil Gaiman did with Dream of the Endless with regards to the broader Sandman mythos, i.e., worked your guys' stuff into the already established mechanics and shit. If you had the foresight to do your research, or better yet, if editorial kept the lore Bible handy and made you actually be familiar with it. I mostly blame the editors here. As much as it does annoy me whenever authors get I am God's gift to storytelling up their own asses. Like I as much as I find the insufferable my ego uber alles thing for authors, as much as I find that annoying, I do mostly blame the editorial for allowing this and allowing you to double down on originality while simultaneously being derivative as shit. Like someone should have told you about these pre-existing things, if for no other reason than it might lead you to like be inspired by those pre-established ideas. And again, if you were smart, you could do what Neil Gaiman did with Dream of the Endless when working him back into the basically reverse engineering the Sandman mythos by connecting all of the Sandman mythoses. You could very easily have done that, and you're not doing that because you appear to not be familiar enough with the material to know that you could do that. Anyway, moving on.
Yep. You don't take on a job like reinventing Spider-Man to go halfway. I continued. I'm leaving it all in the ring with Midnight Spider-Man, and I know Jonathan and Ben are doing the same.
You didn't really reinvent much, my dude. This is the problem of you not knowing the history of the world you're writing for, or the continuities you're playing in. And again, while I do blame y'all a little bit for my ego uber alicing, um, the worst vice of all authors is to think that they're the special sauce instead of their work being the special sauce. But as much as the my ego uber alles thing annoys me, the editor should have burst your bubbles about this shit very quickly. And maybe if you were required to get familiar with the continuity you're playing with, you could come up with interesting stories that relied on some of that pre-established lore. But that would require Marvel actually giving a shit about their own continuity and world building, and they haven't for at least a decade. More's the pity. Anyway, continuing.
So we might have to skip that last article and go to the trailers.
Yep.
Give me 1 second. It's loading. Okay, let me. All right, The Odyssey official new trailer.
I've made it very clear, but the very idea of letting Christopher Nolan make The Odyssey was probably a mistake. The man has not an ounce of whimsy, epicness, grandiosity, mysticism, or like mythical quality to him. He is the very definition of bland and sterile. And so whoever let him try to adapt the Odyssey should be ashamed. Anyway, moving on. Ambrosia.
Okay, give me one. It's a tab. All right.
Tell me what you remember.
A wife?
Nothing.
Okay, so here's the thing. For a trailer focusing on Telemachus's bit, which comes at the end, and mostly pertains to the shit he and Penelope are doing dealing with at home while they're waiting for Odysseus to come back. That makes sense as a trailer thing. But I hope to God the rumor that I've heard is not true. The rumor that I've heard is that Telemachus is actually the main character of this version of the Odyssey, and that there's going to be much more focus put on Telemachus and Penelope than on Odysseus' adventures. And knowing that Christopher Nolan is Christopher Nolan, I could easily see, I don't want this to happen. I would hate that if this does happen, but I could easily predict that it might happen if Odysseus's adventures are just something he made up to justify him cheating on Penelope and taking 10 years to get home. I could easily see that happening because Christopher Nolan does not like mythology, does not like epicness, does not like mystical shit. And so I could easily see that being the twist of this version of the Odyssey, being that Odysseus essentially made it all up. And this is a tall tale he's telling his wife when he gets home as to why he should be allowed to have cheated on her several times. But that would be the most evil and stupid thing you could possibly do with the Odyssey. And so that's why I kind of don't put it past Christopher Nolan, because the man is just anathema to mythologizing. The man is just anathema to adventure, anathema to epics. He can't do it. He's too sterile, too hyper grounded. That's why he shouldn't have been allowed to make this. But I could easily see that being the twist, because Christopher Nolan is Christopher Nolan. Ambrosia.
A son.
And then what?
We won the war. Help me go home.
I got nothing. So
Again, I have the worst possible feeling about this that I've had since I heard that Nolan was being given a basically blank check to do a version of the Odyssey. I kind of knew that roughly this is what we were going to get, because this was entirely predictable, and it's what makes me think I'm taking crazy pills. Because if I could tell you from just hearing that Nolan was making a version of the Odyssey that he was exactly the wrong person to be given this particular epic adventure story, this epic heavy on mythology adventure story, then surely someone in the fucking pitch meeting should have been able to say, "Sir, Christopher Nolan's personal sense of style is all about everything being hyper grounded, and even when high concept things do come up, they're handled in the most grounded, least stylized way possible. Why are we letting him do a mythological epic? This is the thing. Yes, I am a Odyssey fanboy because it is one of the very first pieces of classical literature I ever read. But this is not just any adventure story. The Odyssey is the quintessential adventure story throughout all of the entire Western canon. And I could easily foresee, and this trailer does seem to imply, that Nolan appears to be doing the Odyssey while simultaneously leaving all of the mythological shit out, or implying that the mythological shit was made up, which is the exact fucking antimatter of what you should do with the Odyssey. The adventure should be the focus of the Odyssey. The mythological adventure, the journey home, the trials and tribulations of the man with the strategic mind versus nature, gods, men, monsters, and everything in between. Like, that should be the focus of the story. But I could easily see a fucking cinematic robot man like Christopher Nolan reading the entirety of the Odyssey and going, the mythological stuff is all unbelievable. I'm gonna focus on Telemachus and Penelope and imply that Odysseus made it all up. I really hope that's not the case, but that's the rumor I heard, and nothing about this trailer disabuses me of the possibility of that. Ambrosia.
All right. Let me get to the tab. Also looks, pretty standard, bog standard for Christopher Nolan visually.
Yeah, his particular style, the same style that infected people like Denis Villeneuve and Chloe Zhao, was always going to backfire on this story, and he hasn't done anything out of the ordinary. This is entirely within his playbook. That's why I can so easily see that being the twist, because that is such a Christopher Nolan thing to do, to just remove all the grandiose mythological shit or imply that it was all fiction in the fucking first place. I don't want that to be the case, but when you give somebody like Christopher Nolan this kind of material, don't be surprised if he wrings all the epicness, adventure, mythology, and like grandiosity out of it and hands you back a dingy, deliberately bland, deliberately boring, deliberately taxing to the audience's attention span, sterile version of itself. Because that's what Christopher Nolan does. In the same way that if you get, like, this isn't even just me hating on Christopher Nolan. I do hate Christopher Nolan, and I think he has had a terrible impact on quote-unquote serious dramatic fiction. But this isn't even just me hating on Christopher Nolan. This is simply a matter of this director has a particular style and a particular, like, visual language and storytelling language through which he approaches everything he makes. And that style does not fit with this source material. In the same way that Guillermo del Toro will always make a heavily inspired by like Renaissance aesthetics fairy tale or monster story out of pretty much everything he does. That's what Guillermo del Toro does. So you shouldn't get Guillermo del Toro to do a story that will not lend itself to that. Likewise, Christopher Nolan creates the most blandly self-serious, blandly, like, smugly pretentious, grounded, unmystical, unstylized version of whatever he makes, even and especially when he does things with high concepts. So it's not like this, like, even if I were the most diehard Christopher Nolan fan in the known universe, which, again, I'm very much not. I very much do hate Christopher Nolan. But this isn't coming out of hatred. This is coming out of you can't insert director A into IP B and not have this be the result, you see. Because you can't expect Christopher... Now, mind you, some directors do enjoy experimenting with their style. Some directors do and can make a particular style for a particular IP. But many directors, if not most, get good at their particular niche or their particular sense of style and run with it. And the best you can do for them at that point is to pair them up with things that lend themselves to those styles. And the Odyssey is the quintessential, like, mythological, grandiose, fantastical epic of all of Western literature, so even without the modern casting issues, which I've seen a lot of people cover, that's why I'm not really focusing on it. Even without all the modernized dialogue, which is yes annoying, it lacks the like mythological grandiosity of the source material or any other like ancient Greek story within Hollywood. But I've seen people cover that, and I've seen people hyper focus on that as though this would have worked if not for those elements. And I'm gonna burst the bubble here, folks. This could never have worked because you cannot ask Christopher Nolan to make a movie and then expect him to basically spontaneously get over all of his style defaults. Like, certain directors do things a certain way, which the best thing you can do for them when they find their niche, like that, is pick stories for them that lend themselves to those forms of style. Doesn't mean it will always succeed. Like, I think I can speak for everyone when I say, Tim Burton doing Alice in Wonderland should have been a slam dunk, and it wasn't because for whatever reason Christopher Nolan didn't, or Tim Burton didn't go full Tim Burton when he was making Alice in Wonderland. Same thing with Dumbo. The pink elephant sequence should have been 20 minutes long in Tim Burton's Dumbo, but for whatever reason it wasn't. But the best you can do for a director that has a particular niche is match that niche to source materials and IPs and stories that lend themselves to that particular style. But anyway, Ambrosia.
This is a household waiting for master. I want you to choose me.
Ithaca's king is coming back.
No, he's not.
Again, from the perspective of this is a trailer and we don't want to reveal all the money shots, focusing on Penelope and Telemachus for the sake of the trailer makes sense. But if this is an accurate reflection of the movie, i.e. that you're sidelining the actual adventures of Odysseus in favor of focusing primarily on Telemachus and Penelope, this is going to go horribly wrong. Predictably horribly wrong, because again, contrary to what a lot of people have said, who seem to think that if it weren't for all the modernisms and for all of the modern dialogue, Christopher Nolan's Odyssey would have made perfect sense. I'm again going to be controversial and say this could never have worked because Christopher Nolan is not the sort of person who can understand things in an epic, mythological, adventurous, grandiose, fantastical, mythical, or mystical way. He just can't do it, and expecting him to spontaneously learn how to do it is a farce. Moving on.
I'm almost suspecting that someone like an Asylum or something is going to try and release an Odyssey, like low budget adaptation or whatever.
I mean, Disney, if you want brownie points, like free brownie points, Disney, purchase rights to Epic the Musical, dust off classical hand-drawn animation for Epic the Musical, release it kind of in the style of Disney's Hercules, and rake in all the money.
Someone already bought the rights and is looking to produce right?
Good.
Oh,
Live action or animation?
I can't remember. I thought I sent that to you.
I don't think you did, no. Or if
Shit.
you did, it was a while ago, and I don't remember.
Not bad.
But good. I'm glad someone is doing actual interesting things with the Odyssey. Because this is the thing, the Epic the Musical also does like modernized dialogue, also tries to kind of make the Odyssey make sense within a modern storytelling lens. But you know what? It does so out of love for the Odyssey, and it does so to make that timeless story.
But to be fair, a major inspiration, I believe the creator said, was also anime.
Yeah. And like, yeah. All of that makes sense, and it's done out of love, and it's done more so out of an understanding for the source material. Because that's the thing. Not only is Epic the Musical just good from a like songwriting perspective, which is, but also the particular choices they make with the songs, like the songs they like the elements they decide to focus on and bring to the fore with the songs is stuff you would only know if you knew the Odyssey like the back of your hand. Like off the top of my head, the best example of this is God Games. Most people, even quite a lot of people who've read the Odyssey, don't really focus on or remember the bet between Zeus and Athena that is immortalized in God Games. But the person who made Epic the Musical does know the Odyssey like the back of his hand and is therefore able to make an entire number out of a bet between Zeus and Athena. And so forth and so on. But Christopher Nolan, he just, even if I didn't hate his guts, which I do, and I will cop to that, I despise what Christopher Nolan's style has done to dramatic storytelling in particular. Like the allegedly supposed to be taken seriously, artsy fartsy fucking upscale dramas. I despise what Christopher Nolan's ubiquity and success has done to Hollywood in this regard. But even excluding that, from trying to be empathetic to Christopher Nolan, I don't know if making the Odyssey was his idea, in which case someone should have told him no, or if it was a studio idea and they tapped Christopher Nolan to do it. But regardless of whether it was his idea or whether it was the studio's idea, someone should have told them that this was not going to work, because Christopher Nolan's storytelling language and style and like the way he decides to shoot things given pre-established IPs and pre-established source materials cannot work with the Odyssey. I actually I left a comment earlier on a video where I made a list of directors whose styles could have added something interesting to the Odyssey instead of Christopher Nolan. Peter Jackson would be amazing if he put the same level of deference to Homer's Odyssey as he did to Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. That movie would be fucking flawless. Another really good choice would be Gore Verbinski, he of the Pirates of the Caribbean movie fame. Another great choice would be Darren Aronofsky, who has done a lot of really cool and really weird and interesting things, but the most like commercially successful of his movies, I believe, is still Noah. The version that actually included the Nephilim for once. Again, if he put the same kind of deference and stylization into the Odyssey as he did into Noah when he made the Noah movie, that would have worked. Even directors that I don't particularly care for, like Luc Besson, their styles would have added something interesting to the source material and would have been able to focus on the interesting, adventurous, mythological aspects of the source material. Even somebody who, let's be honest, has his moments of good style, but is not exactly a great director, like Zack Snyder or Stephen Sommers of the Mummy movie fame. if you gave them the same kind of budget and the same kind of resources as they gave to Christopher Nolan for whatever fucking reason, and again, I don't know nor do I care whether it was Christopher Nolan's idea or whether it was the studio's idea, because regardless of whether it was
Hey, Don.
Nolan's idea himself or the studio's idea, someone should have told him this is very obviously a bad idea with very obvious red flags that we're all ignoring for no reason. Anyway, Ambrosia.
Before that, we're probably going to have to call it after this trailer because, well, one, I got to celebrate a birthday tomorrow. Not mine, but also I'm just starting to feel tired because I've been up since like 8.
I actually woke up fairly early today by my standards. I woke up at like 11.
Good for you.
I mean, not exactly. I went to bed at like 7, so I don't even know how many hours that is, but yeah.
4. You know,
I know you have to work, but for the love of God, learn how to go back to bed when you don't have to work.
no, you slept 4 hours. That's what I said.
Bugger.
No, I got up at 8.
Okay, good for you.
I mean, there was a moment I briefly woke up at 6 thinking, oh shit, I'm late for work.
Well, good. I'm glad. I'm glad you actually got to sleep in, even if it did result in you panicking. I had a dream last night about I had a dream last night that I was still in college and that I had accidentally failed my final exam.
You know, given how dreams were described in the Multiverse of Madness, there is a version of you that did.
Yes, I know. That's one of the reasons I'm glad I'm glad I never went back to college, despite my mother's chagrin there. I am very glad that I never went back to college.
Anyway, let's finish.
Ambrosia.
Hold on. Okay, there we go.
What would he do if he came back here and find all these studios in his house?
You're pining for a daddy you didn't even know, like some sniveling bastard.
Who's looking after your wife and son?
I mean, to be fair, Ron Pattinson is, I believe, Antinius. He's doing pretty well.
I mean, like, everyone seems to be doing their job, which is good and all, but I truly believe that if they had had the good sense to cast unknown actors, this could go over better. And it's no shade towards Matt Damon. It's no shade towards Tom Holland. It's no shade toward Robert Pattinson. But it is somewhat jarring in a pulls me out of the movie sort of way that they don't really disappear into their characters. They're just kind of playing their default personas. Yeah, Ambrosia.
You see,
My dad is coming home.
bringing vengeance. Bringing it all.
Yeah, nothing.
I've already said when I needed to say. Someone who actually gave a damn about Christopher Nolan should have told him, if this was his idea, that this just isn't meant for you, Chris. And if it was the studio's idea, the studio should be fucking ashamed. Ambrosia.
I need everyone at this party dead. I can still save them.
You're a man who needs to control his fate. But you cannot control this. That world is...
This is gonna bite everyone in it in the ass, and I feel bad for the actors. My only question is, how badly will this bomb? Because all the people who give a damn about historical and mythological accuracy have been pissed off since day one. All the people who, like me, could obviously tell that this was a really bad source material to hand to Christopher. Blandness is essentially equivalent to seriousness, Nolan, and everyone who wants an interesting adventure story is also going to be pissed. So, like, my only question is, how badly will this underperform, and how badly will it bite the careers of everyone in it? I believe that's the end.
No, we got 30 minutes. About 30 seconds left.
God, this is a long trailer to contain nothing at all. Ambrosia.
God.
No one could stand between me and home. Not even the gods.
Keep us straight!
Nice, that's it.
Yep. Outros.
With that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avidazay, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom. Now fuck off the brainstorm. I can sleep.
see you guys.